Hello, and welcome to the American Society of Brewing Chemists and Brewers Association's collaborative instructional video series for basic brewing analysis. Today I'm going to show you how to calibrate a hydrometer. I'm also going to walk you through how to use a hydrometer for measuring a parent extract using the ASBC method Beer 3B. Consult the ASBC Beer Degassing Methods and Alternatives Matrix to determine the best options for degassing and filtering wort and beer samples in preparation for other analyses. This sample was prepared using filter paper to degass and filter the beer. Brewers need to know the density of wort in fermenting beer to determine alcohol percentage and degree of fermentation, among other parameters. Accurate density measurements are critical to ensure that these measurements and subsequent calculations or conversions are accurate. High-quality, properly calibrated hydrometers can be used to accurately determine the density of beer and wort samples. They can be purchased pre-calibrated or can be calibrated using ASBC method Beer 3B. Keep in mind, hydrometers are fragile instruments made of glass and can be easily broken. For this method, you will need a hydrometer, hydrometer cylinder, a water bath, transfer pipettes, distilled or reagent water, beer or wort sample, and some detergent. Make sure you are using a hydrometer that covers the density range appropriate for the liquid you are measuring. In order to calibrate or verify the calibration of a hydrometer, measure distilled water that is at 20 degrees Celsius, or the calibration temperature of your specific hydrometer. A water bath should be used to ensure that the calibration water is at 20 degrees Celsius. Before any sample is measured, the hydrometer and cylinder must be cleaned of any residue or debris. Thoroughly clean both the hydrometer and cylinder with detergent. Rinse thoroughly and allow to air dry. Fill the cylinder with enough sample that liquid will overflow when the hydrometer is placed in the tube. Hold the hydrometer by the end of the stem, well above the measuring section that will be in the test fluid. Rinse the hydrometer with test fluid, starting about 1 centimeter above the expected reading on the scale. Carefully lower the hydrometer into the test fluid so that the stem is not wet more than 1 centimeter above the final resting level. If the liquid meniscus is distorted as the stem slips through the surface, the stem is now dirty and must be re-cleaned. Once the hydrometer is steady in the water, carefully add more water to the top of the cylinder. Be careful to minimize any oscillation of the hydrometer in the test fluid. Add enough test fluid so the top of the meniscus can be read at a right angle to the profile on the stem. Take multiple measurements with the distilled, atempered water until a constant value is obtained. If that value is above or below the expected measurement, subsequent measurements must be adjusted with the same correction. Ideally, each hydrometer should be calibrated using test fluids with known densities that are near the low, middle, and high end of the hydrometer's scale range. Take note of the difference measured on the hydrometer as compared to the calibration standard. This difference is the bias associated with this hydrometer. You must account for this bias for the hydrometer to be calibrated. If the bias is greater than 1 Plato, you should consider replacing it with one that has less bias. Now we have our calibrated and verified hydrometer ready to measure our degassed and filtered beer or wort samples. For measuring the density of beer or wort, use the same procedure described for calibration. Use the water bath to ensure the sample is at 20 degrees Celsius. Fill the cylinder with enough sample that liquid will overflow when the hydrometer is placed in the tube. Hold the hydrometer by the end of the stem well above the measuring section that will be immersed in the sample. Rinse the hydrometer with some sample, starting about 1 centimeter above the expected reading. Carefully lower the hydrometer into the test fluid so that the stem is not wet more than 1 centimeter above the final point of rest. If the meniscus is distorted as the stem slips through the surface, the stem is now dirty and must be re-cleaned. Once the hydrometer is steady in the test fluid, carefully add more sample to the top of the cylinder. Be careful to minimize any oscillation of the hydrometer in the beer. Add enough beer so the top of the meniscus can be read at a right angle to the profile on the stem. It is critical to accurately measure the temperature of the beer or wort to adjust the reading if the reading is not at 20 degrees Celsius. Table 1 in the beer 3B method can be used to adjust the reading according to the sample temperature. Many hydrometers have a built-in thermometer to indicate any correction necessary due to temperature of the sample. Make sure to read through any ASBC method completely before taking any measurements or samples. Many nuances exist with methods and must be practiced for best results. If you have additional questions regarding the method or analysis, contact the ASBC at asbcnet.org. Additional videos can be found at asbcnet.org and brewersassociation.org. Cheers!